Welcome into this Kansas City Chiefs live stream from Show Me Football and KC Sports Report. I'm Michael D'Arcy. He's Josh Fann. And over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to get to your questions and also just talk a little bit of Chiefs football. But Josh, my first question for you is, how are you doing on this fine evening?
Michael, I am doing absolutely fantastic. And one of the reasons I am doing fantastic is because the playoffs are finally here and the Kansas City Chiefs get a bye week, which means we just get to sit back, relax, stress-free football, watching the AFC playoff picture unfold. And then we'll talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and who their opponent is after we find that out. But for now, we just get to sit back, relax, and watch football.
You know, it's kind of a bittersweet moment because last year I got to go down to Arizona to do a Bleacher Report live stream for the Chiefs and Dolphins. So, I do have a lot of fond memories from this time last year and the Chiefs, beating the Dolphins. It was really exciting. That game was freezing cold. And so, I'm going to miss not, watching the Chiefs play in a playoff game, but I'm not going to miss, the stress that is associated with that. And it's good to see, though, we already have an active chat for this live stream. Good to see you, Eddie and Graham and Patty and Tony. It's always good to see you, Lisa. And so, we want to make this as interactive as possible so you can leave your comments, down in the chat. We want to make you guys a part of this show. And, yesterday, both Josh and I put out a community tab because we wanted to get your thoughts on just current Chiefs issues. And we actually did get a couple of really good questions. And so we actually wanted to talk about those really quickly. And I think how we'll do this, Josh, I'll read off one, and then you could read off one from your community tab.
Okay.
The first comment that I got from Kansas City Chiefs for Life asked, is Isaiah Pacheco doing all right? Now, he suffered that injury against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It seemed to be a rib injury, and Andy Reid said that it was tender, and so he was basically left out of practice. And so I'm not really concerned about the, long-term effects of that. But I do think that he'll be good to go for the playoffs. Josh, I feel like I kind of want to ask you, who is the most effective running back? Would you put, Isaiah Pacheco out there in the playoffs, or would you rather go with Kareem Hunt, who's looked pretty good running the football?
Well, first of all, before I answer your question, Michael, just want to remind everyone to leave their questions down below. I know you already said that, but I want to emphasize, guys, this is a live Q&A to answer everything Chiefs related you guys are wondering about. So leave your questions in the comments down below, and we'll be sure to get to them in this episode. Now, to that person's question, because they asked if Isaiah Pacheco is doing all right. I'm assuming part of that question is based off the fact he hasn't really been performing well lately. His yards per carry have been way down since injury. He doesn't look as explosive. And we kind of figured that would be the case when he first returned. But also with the rib injury, I'm not too concerned about that individual injury. I think he'll be fine. Running backs, you get their ribs injured all the time. Isaiah Pacheco is a tough dude. I don't think that'll affect the way that he runs or anything like that. But I am a little bit more concerned about the way that he has looked since coming back from the broken leg. Kareem Hunt has been the better running back, Michael, since Isaiah Pacheco has returned to the lineup. Maybe not even, not that he's necessarily been more productive, rushing for a bunch more yards, but in those situations where the Chiefs need a few yards, when you look at their success rate with Kareem Hunt in at running back, it's not even close. Kareem Hunt sees the hole better. His vision is better. He's not as explosive of a runner as Isaiah Pacheco, but in those big moments where you need a few yards, you just have to give the ball to Kareem Hunt. He's been so much better in those scenarios.
I feel like a good way of discussing it is you could say that Kareem Hunt hasn't been more – well, I think he has been more productive, but he's been more effective in those short yardage situations than Pacheco has been. I feel like he's still dealing with that leg injury, and you can kind of just tell by the way he runs that, he lost a little bit of the explosiveness that made him Isaiah Pacheco, but I'm not worried about, what he's going to do in the playoffs because I feel like the Chiefs are going to be very efficient with their running game. They're not going to get a ton of, 10, 15-yard runs. They're going to get 5 to 6 yard runs. That's just going to help, continue to move the chains. And so I'm not super concerned about that. I know VC said that Pacheco over Hunt, 1-2 punch regardless. I feel like the Chiefs are in a really good spot where you've got two very capable running backs, but you don't have to lean on one over the other because, Josh, I don't know about you, but trotting Kareem Hunt out there, he's damn near 30. You're going to kill him if you just keep putting him out there, and that could be a scary thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You still have to mix it up because you don't want one guy getting all of the carries, especially Kareem Hunt at this age. It's very clear that he will wear down as the game goes on, as the season has went on. That's kind of been the case. So you still want to have Isaiah Pacheco in there, and that you want to utilize that speed that he still has. Like, I'm not saying Isaiah Pacheco sucks. Like, he's still a helpful piece to this team. But in those certain situations, like there were several times this season where the Chiefs needed 1 or 2 yards in short yardage, and they handed it off to Pacheco for some reason consecutive times, and it didn't work.
They did it twice.
Yeah.
Twice on the same drive.
Yeah, and that's just a Kareem Hunt situation there.
Yeah, I just don't understand the thought process of using Pacheco in those short yardage situations when you have someone in Kareem Hunt who's been a touchdown machine, a 3rd and 4th down merchant this season. Like, Why would you go away from that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It is good to see Chiefs Blitz in the comment section. Got some info for you, Mr. D'Arcy. It could end either really good for us or we are losing out on something. Well, if you want, you can always shoot me a DM. And I don't know if this is something that we could discuss on the live stream, but I definitely want to hear whatever this news is. Why don't we also get to this question from Graham asking, do you know how Connor is doing? Now, he suffered that injury. He was concussed a couple weeks ago, but isn't it a shoulder injury?
Yeah, he injured his shoulder in the Denver game.
Okay. I don't think we've gotten an update yet, though.
No, I have not seen one. I would think if it was real serious that there would be more coverage for it. And the Chiefs still had that bye week before their first playoff game. So right now I'm going to assume that he's going to be okay. And maybe it was probably just a stinger. Also, shout out Chiefs Blitz because I didn't get to say anything to him, but nice to see you here. I mean, big shout out to you. We use your reporting constantly on both of our channels for our videos. So yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah, he's definitely the one stop on Chiefs Twitter that if you have not already done so, go follow him there. He's also on YouTube as well. I've listened to a lot of the podcasts that you guys put out, so definitely go check out Chiefs Blitz if you haven't already. I'm actually waiting for that DM because now you have me curious. Actually, okay. So Chiefs, this is according to Chiefs Blitz. As of right now, via direct message, he said, sounds like Hardman is fully healthy. The Chiefs are going to waive Remigio with the plan of having him on the 53-man roster next season to be the starting kick/punt return specialist and a slot receiver. The organization is very happy with their contributors this season and are hoping he clears waivers. That's a really interesting update. So shout out to Chiefs Blitz for the update.
Yeah, shout out. Giving us the breaking
Hardman
news.
Is fully healthy. Wow, I was not expecting to get that news. Definitely not via direct message, but Josh, what do you think about that? Do you think that Mecole Hardman is an upgrade over Nico Remigio in terms of special teams usage?
When I did my injury update before the Denver game, just kind of like a big just news dump about injuries on the Kansas City Chiefs, I talked about this a little bit. You guys know over the years, those that have been following Michael and I for a while, that I was never a big Mecole Hardman fan. I always thought he made a lot of boneheaded plays, turned the ball over a lot. But this year specifically, he's been a very solid return man. I'm not really impressed by anything he does at wide receiver, though the threat of just someone running deep that has speed, taking a defender with them, is fine for a 5th or 6th wide receiver. But mainly you'd be bringing back Mecole Hardman for that punt return, kick return stuff. And at this point, I think he's fine for that. I've been impressed with him this year, returning kicks. And Remigio, he's given you some good snaps as well, but I don't think he's quite ready for the big stage yet. And he did have a scare a few weeks ago. I believe it was against the Pittsburgh Steelers where he fumbled a kickoff that very easily could have been recovered by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, as far as him making it through waivers, that seems like a risky thing to do at this point in the year. Because, Michael, if you remember, the Chiefs really liked who was it? It was a defensive back a couple years ago. They ended up doing this, and he got claimed by the Bengals and then missed out on the Chiefs Super Bowl run because he was on the Bengals, and then they lost.
he got in some legal trouble. I remember
Chris Lamons.
Yeah, it was Chris Lamons.
But my point is that they waived him thinking like, he's just going to come back here. And the Bengals were like, yeah, not so fast. We're going to claim him. And they never got him back. He may have returned to the team after that. I can't remember exactly, but it seems like a little bit of a risk to waive a guy that you like right now.
And specifically Remigio, I feel like there's other guys. Like, if you waive Jody Fortson, you waive Jody Fortson. But, like, Nico Remigio's given you really good snaps, this season.
Wasn't he the leading receiver in the Denver game?
He was. Not only was he the leading receiver, but he's been someone that when he returns punts and kicks, he looks really good and efficient. And so I don't like the Chiefs potentially risking his future with the team because, listen, the Chiefs are the back-to-back reigning and defending Super Bowl champions. When they release guys, when they waive them, other teams take notice and they tried, like, how quickly was Luis Reese-Zammit a Jacksonville Jaguar? How quickly, Josh? It was pretty quick.
Well, that one felt like they wanted to expand their footprint overseas since that's where LRZ was from. I mean, that was great marketing for them, a great marketing strategy. But no, I mean, the risk that you take when you try waiving a guy like Nico at this point is that another team picks him up and tries to pick his brain ahead of your playoff matchup. I have a feeling that's probably what will end up happening if they attempt to waive him. I don't understand that.
Well, especially if you think that he's going to be part of the future, like, why don't we waive Sky Moore? Why don't we get rid of him?
Well, he's on IR anyway, so he doesn't really count against anything. He's not coming back, but I mean, I get your point. Yeah, I don't know. That's a little strange to me if that's what they decide to do.
Because it's also like, if you just want to talk upside, like, we have not really seen Mecole Hardman show much upside. Now, he did catch, the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, and I understand that, and the Chiefs have a certain loyalty, but if we're basing Nico Remigio's potential off of this season, he could be better than Justin Watson. He could definitely be better than a Mecole Hardman or even a Juju Smith-Schuster next year with the future being so unknown. I feel like he's shown this season that he can provide you a little bit of boost to energy, and he's also going to be really reliable in special teams. Like, you have to think about it realistically. The Chiefs aren't just losing a potential number 6 wide receiver. They're losing their starting, punt returner. And actually, I think I saw your tweet earlier today, Chiefs Blitz, that they cut someone, or they waived someone to make room for Washington, the special teamer. So, like, clearly the Chiefs are thinking that, they're going to shake things up on the special teams side.
Yeah, I guess so. Now, I mean, ultimately, I think it would be good news that Mecole Hardman is back and healthy. But I do not like waiving Remigio at this point. I mean, if we're being completely honest, is Mecole that much of an upgrade over Nico that you risk waiving him and losing him if you really like him?
Yeah. Okay, so I also got more news from Chief Splits via direct message. I'm getting so many scoops tonight. He said, first practice post-bye is most likely Tuesday. The plan is to give Humphries all the reps at left tackle with the starting O-line. Reed and 15 leading towards DJ Humphries for the playoffs.
Well, I think that's
what do you think about that?
Well, I was going to say that's probably a good segue because that was one of my questions from someone on my community post for the Q&A. That was from Enterprise NCC-1701. He's been a regular on the channel. Shout out to him. He said he's glad we're doing this, but his question is, DJ Humphries just didn't look good in the Broncos game. Would you keep Tooney at LT? Now, I wouldn't say DJ Humphries didn't look good. He didn't look great. He had some bad reps. He had some really solid reps. My thing with DJ Humphries, though, is I just don't think he's shown enough to undoubtedly be your left tackle in the playoffs. Now, him getting all the practice reps is one thing because I'm sure they're going to try him out there and see what he looks like. Whether that's the decision they make on game day or not, I don't know. But it would be nice if we get a healthy DJ Humphries, a good DJ Humphries who has knocked the rust off, and Joe Tooney back at left guard. Because that's the best case scenario, right? Now, Joe Tooney at left tackle might be the safest option at this point because you know what he can do at left tackle. And Mike Caliendo has been okay. But the best case scenario would be a ready-to-go, healthy DJ Humphries who is no longer rusty and your all-pro left guard back at left guard.
Josh, I don't know how I feel about that news. I was not expecting that update because I've kind of been under the impression that after watching that game in Denver and watching DJ Humphries' health and his, stamina wear down as the game went on, I could have told you that the Chiefs were not super confident with, DJ Humphries potentially, being the starting left tackle in the playoffs, especially when you saw how good Joe Thuney was. Now, I feel like the ideal best case scenario 3 weeks ago was that DJ Humphries got back and healthy in time for the playoffs, and they used Joe Thuney back at left guard because Joe Thuney's just significantly better at the position than Mike Caliendo. But now we have to kind of worry about the health status of DJ Humphries going forward. I know that he, was able to go through that Denver game relatively unscathed. He didn't suffer any injuries, but I don't know how much they can bank on that in the playoffs. And you're also going to go up against the best of the best edge rushers. If you face Houston, you know what those guys can do. If we face the Chargers, they've got a couple of good pass rushers. So it's like, do you trust DJ Humphries in this spot? I don't know if I do.
Well, and like against the Los Angeles Chargers in particular, we saw DJ Humphries against that team earlier on in his first game with the Kansas City Chiefs. And Mahomes took a lot of hits in that Chargers game specifically. Like every time he was dropping back, he had a guy in his face. So I'm with you, man. Like it's risky. I would have just opted to stay with Joe Thuney, play the hot hand, go with who you know has been playing well for you and that can give you serviceable left tackle play. Like in an ideal world, DJ Humphries as your starter is great. I just don't know if you can roll out there in the first playoff game and have a guy at left tackle that has hardly played all year and has no chemistry or rapport with Patrick Mahomes.
I'm also a little bit concerned that, what's the likelihood that he finishes the playoff game strong? Like even healthy or, you saw, he did get pulled from the game late in the fourth quarter, which apparently the Chiefs had seen enough and they knew that he was going to be, solid. And I will say that, Mike Caliendo also didn't play in that game. So they weren't really confident that.
Yeah. It seems like they're planning for him. Like,
yeah. But it was Hunter Norzad and CJ Hansen. And listen, they were all right. At times it looked like Hansen wasn't very good, but Humphries didn't have the Joe Thuney on his right side that he would have had in a playoff game. But when you look at one-on-one matchups, I don't know if Humphries gave up a sack in that Denver game. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if he did, but you kind of saw as the game went on, he wore down. And part of that might just be an age thing, and he's coming back from injury. And so, I think that is a concern that, Joe Thuney has shown you for, I think it was 3 or 4 games that he could start at left tackle. DJ Humphries has shown you for 1 3/4 of a game.
Yep. Yeah. That's risky to me. I mean, that's all I have really to say about it. It's risky. I figured at this point he was more so there for depth, break glass in case of emergency, or you could try him at guard. We've talked about that before, but that's risky. I do want to say though, since we have a little bit larger of a crowd than when we first started, guys, this is a live Q&A. So if you want to leave your questions down there below, we will get to them in this live stream. Your comment will be thrown up there. We'll answer your question. But Michael, did you want to ask another question from your community post or?
Yeah, let me pull that up. Yeah, guys, all the comments that we're addressing right now is coming from the community post that we posted yesterday. So why don't you leave your comments down in this live chat so we can get to it. But the next question is, how is Butker? Seems the injury has put a bump in the road. I think that is worth talking about because, listen, after that game in Denver where he only got 1 attempt, but he missed from 51 yards, I was kind of a little bit nervous about the possibility of him missing a big kick in the playoffs. Josh, before I kind of completely lose it, what are your thoughts on Harrison Butker?
I just think that injury was always worse than they had let on. They waited too long to get the surgery when it was clear that he had been dropping to a knee on that plant leg every single kick this season. They waited too long for the surgery. Now that he's gotten the surgery, he's not really all the way recovered. or something is still wrong there. And we're seeing it because he's still dropping to that knee on some of his kicks. And now he's missing. And I just think, this is another situation where the Chiefs tried to rush a guy back from injury or tried to keep him in there for too long before they opted to get that surgery. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm worried about him because he's missing kicks that he typically makes. It's popped up too many times now. We know from last postseason how important that Butker is when he's healthy, because all those playoff games, every kick mattered from Harrison Butker. I mean, look at last year's Super Bowl versus the 49ers. He had to break the record that was previously set by Jake Moody in that same game for the longest field goal in Super Bowl history. He had the field goal at the end to send it to overtime. Like, he's important. He cannot be missing kicks like this in the postseason.
No, he can't. And listen, Harrison Butker has been, I would say, the best kicker in the NFL for the past couple of seasons. I've been watching a ton of Chiefs postseason highlights just going back from the Super Bowl runs, and it seems like in every game he makes a big kick when this team truly needs it. And so I don't think the importance of Harrison Butker can be understated. But when you just watched how he's played since coming back from that injury, a point that I'm going to make that I haven't really heard very many other people talk about, you can say that he's only missed a couple field goals. He missed a 30-something yarder, and then he missed that 51-yarder against the Broncos, and he's like 8 of 9 on extra points. And so if you just look at it, statistically, he hasn't been horrible. But even the kicks that he's making, his accuracy isn't as good as it's been. He's been really kicking wide left more often. And I don't know if that's a microcosm of his injury and he doesn't feel comfortable planting, but his accuracy when kicking has just been way down. Like, the field goals that he used to just nail down the middle have been, really close to scraping the left upright. And I think that is a concern that come postseason time, like, you need to be accurate. You also need to make your kicks. But if you're starting to kick stuff wide left, it only takes one to go off the crossbar or go wide left. Look at Tyler Bass last year. He was wide right, sent him home. So, the importance of having a good kicker and a reliable kicker in the playoffs is important. And that's why, in that Denver game, I would have liked to see the offense go down the field and at least put Harrison Butker in field goal range so we could try to, make a kick and have that in his mind. So his last memory of kicking isn't just missing it completely.
Well, my other long-term concern too is, and we talked about this in the previous video, but once kickers lose their mojo and start missing like a bunch of kicks, they almost never get that back. And so you don't want Butker's mentality to dip and his confidence to dip, because once that happens, I don't know if you can come back from that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, kickers, it just seems like a confidence thing. Like, once their confidence is gone, like you said, it's just like you almost need to put them out to pasture. Like, look at Justin Tucker right now. Do you feel confident that he's going to go in a playoff game and make like a game-winning kick? I don't.
It's a lot more 50-50 than it used to be.
But the thing is I feel like we're getting to that point with Harrison Butker where it is a lot more 50-50. And that kind of concerns me because, again, how many big kicks has Harrison Butker made in his Chiefs career? Like, how many?
A lot.
10?
I mean, multiple kicks
game
in
winners,
the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Like
a game winner in the Super Bowl. Yeah. I mean, it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing. Do you want to read one comment off? We also have some in the chat too we can get to.
Yeah, well, you can do the one in the chat, and then I'll pull up one of mine from the community post. But okay. I see King Jamie had a question down there, so we can get to that one.
This is coming from my guy, King Jamie, who is a very active member on the AFC West Roundtable. I want to give a quick plug. At 8 p.m., I guess 9 p.m. Eastern, if you're watching from the Eastern time zone, we do an AFC West Roundtable with a bunch of creators from different divisions. I am the Chiefs representative, and if you guys want to represent the Chiefs Kingdom over there, where there's a bunch of Raiders fans, there's a bunch of Broncos fans, not so many Chargers fans, but definitely head over there to the AFC West Roundtable. There should be a link in the description of this live stream. I'll be over there at 8 p.m. But King Jamie says, how excited are you guys to see Remigio next season? Now, you might have missed the news, King Jamie, But apparently, according to Chiefs Blitz, there is a chance the Chiefs waive Nico Remigio, which means that he would have to clear waivers before the Chiefs could end up with, Remigio back on the roster. And so I feel like if that ends up being true, that, man, we're probably going to not see Remigio on the active roster because I don't know about you, Josh. I think he's getting claimed.
Yeah, like we talked about this earlier, we touched on it, but it kind of feels like at this point, if you were to waive him, he's shown enough that another team would pick him up, or at the very least, another team in the postseason would look to pick him up to try and pick his brain prior to a playoff matchup against Kansas City.
Yeah, that's always something that we could see. And, we mentioned that they did that. Cincinnati did that with Chris Lamons a couple of years ago. And I don't know how much Chris Lamons helped them in their search to beat the Chiefs, but Nico Remigio has actually played some meaningful reps and some snaps this year for this team. So, I think he would actually offer something in terms of knowledge that, a Buffalo Bills or a Chargers could, really utilize. And I don't know if the upside of Mecole Hardman outweighs the upside of Nico Remigio.
Right. You don't know if that Mecole Hardman's that much of an upgrade that you risk losing Remigio to the waiver wire.
Yeah. But I think that's a good way to answer that question.
Yeah. So I'll pull up another question for mine. So this is also from Enterprise NCC. Second question. The Cincinnati Bengals fans are crying on X. They're saying the Chiefs were scared of them. Can you explain to the Bengals fans that they're 9-8 team and they have nobody to blame but themselves for not making the playoffs?
They're trash. Listen, watching the Cincinnati Bengals fans melt down on Twitter might be one of my favorite things to happen in 2025 so far. I mean, seeing the way that they bent over backwards to say that the league was rigged. You had people saying the league was rigged because the Chiefs rested their starters like 4 other teams did. There was one guy, his name was Joe Goodberry.
Oh, Goodberry. Like yeah, I've seen him before.
He melted down in ways that that level of cope I have not seen in a long time. And so it's crazy to me that, you're seeing Bengals fans blame the Chiefs for them not getting into the playoffs when they lost to the New England Patriots in the first week of the season, when they've just lost continuously. They finished 9-8. They did not deserve to get into the playoffs because they needed help. They couldn't do it themselves. And so the only reason that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to Cancun is because they could not handle business in the regular season.
Well, the funniest thing is I noticed a lot of their fans wanting the NFL to enforce a rule that they have about integrity for the game and stuff like that. And they were saying that the Chiefs should be punished for pulling their starters so that the Bengals don't make the playoffs, which is just so stupid because it's not like the Chiefs intentionally threw the game. They had the privilege of resting their starters because they had so much success over the regular season. That is the benefit to going 15-1, 15-2 in the regular season, is that you can rest your starters in the final week of the regular season prior to gearing up for a postseason run. So it's just ridiculous that they would even suggest that the Chiefs threw the game so that they don't make it. Now, that said, Michael, we both agree that we prefer the Bengals not to make the playoffs. And I know people gave us heat for that because they're like, why are you scared of the Bengals? We're not scared of the Bengals. We'd still pick the Chiefs to win, but it's just, we made a video that will come out about who we don't want to see in the divisional round. If the Bengals had made it, out of all the teams, Texans, Steelers, now I forget off the top of my head who they would have knocked out. Probably the Broncos, I think it was.
Yeah.
If they had made
the 7th
it.
seed. Yeah.
So out of all those teams, you probably would at least want to face the Bengals because it's still Joe Burrow. It's still Jamar Chase. That's a team that can catch you on the right day. The quarterback matchup is as close to even as it's going to get. So, yeah, we didn't want the Bengals to make the playoffs, but all that being said, they didn't deserve to make it at the end of the day.
No, they didn't. They finished 9-8, and just going over some of their losses, it was bad. They were not a playoff team for most of the season, and you could even argue their wins weren't that impressive. I mean, they beat a really bad Steelers team that is making the playoffs because they always start off the season hot and then they just kind of revert to the mean. But you could see that clearly this Bengals team didn't have it in the first, 10 games of the season. And it's so funny because, like, you know, Joe Burrow put up MVP stats. His team went 9-8 and didn't make the playoffs. Jamar Chase put up, I think, did he go for the Triple Crown this year? Like,
yes, he did.
Seeing him put up all those numbers, and it doesn't matter because, again, they're going to be watching this postseason from the couch. And I feel like it's just so ironic that we're seeing people talk about how the Bengals should have got in. The Chiefs are scared of the Bengals. Chiefs aren't scared of the Bengals. They beat them earlier this year. We'll beat them again if we wanted to, but it was just a situation where the Chiefs weren't going to play their starters, so Cincinnati got in. Like, why would you do that in a meaningless game where you've got nothing to prove?
Yep. No, well, King Jamie said it best in the comments. Like, they made their bed. Now they have to sleep in it. That's perfectly put.
Best way to describe it. Now, this next question I do want to get into. Kerm the Goat asks, you guys still think Karlaftis is trash? Put some respect on George's name. I will say, George Karlaftis has played really well as of, late in the past couple of games. I never said he was trash. I just think he's a defensive end number 2. I don't think that he's someone that can be the number 1 pass rusher, on a defensive line, and he's not. Chris Jones is the number 1 pass rusher, but like edge rusher speaking, he's a very good 2.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you got to this question because I wanted to get to it next if you didn't end up doing it. But I've never said he's trash. Like, I agree with you. He's a number 2. The problem that I have with Karlaftis, or I guess I should say my problem with the way that the Chiefs treat him, is they treat him like a franchise pass rusher, and he's not. He's a defensive end number 2. If you have seen those pass rush win rate charts that Seth Walder of ESPN makes, he does a great job. George Karlaftis is always in the bottom left quadrant of the pass rush win rate charts, meaning he does not win his pass rush reps enough, and he does not win them quick enough. And if you look at a lot of his sacks that he does accumulate, they are energy and effort sacks after Chris Jones has collapsed the pocket. George Karlaftis does not win enough on his own from the edge. He doesn't win quick enough. There is a reason that this Chiefs team traded for Joshua Uche at the deadline. Now, ultimately, it looks like it's not going to work out, but there's a reason that they traded for him. And there's a reason that they invested in a guy like FAU who had a little bit more athleticism than your typical Steve Spagnuolo defensive end, is because this defense desperately needs a speed rusher on the outside, and Karlaftis is not a speed rusher. He has a high floor because he has really good technique and he has a really high motor, but he's a defensive end number 2 because he doesn't win his pass rush reps quick enough and frequently enough to be a number 1 defensive end. If he's your defensive end number 2, you're doing really, really good. He's a great number 2 to have, especially with Chris Jones still there on the interior, but he's not a guy that I would ever call a defensive end 1. I don't think he's ever a guy that's going to rack up sacks all because he was able to beat his blocker in 2 seconds or less. Like, it's just not the type of player that he is.
We don't have a Trey Hendrickson or a Nick Benito. Like, we just don't have that guy. Like, we've got a great defensive tackle in Chris Jones, but someone like that you trust one-on-one against a tackle. George Karlaftis, I think he's played good football, and he's been worth the first-round draft pick, unlike someone like Felix Anudike-Uzomah.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I feel like he's a really good number 2. You just can't expect him, to be number 1. And that's okay. That's okay. The issue that I have is paying a guy like Mike Dana and expecting him to be a number 2 or even a number 1.
Yeah, because that's my issue with him. And that's why whenever they extended him, like, I was kind of like, because, like, I like Mike Dana, but I don't like him as a starter. And the Chiefs treat him like a starter. They play him starter snaps. And his pass rush win rate is far too mediocre to be a starting defensive end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, this comment from Chiefs Blitz saying y'all touched on the Chiefs OC in 25 yet. That actually is a really good topic of conversation because Matt Nagy's getting some head coaching looks. And I don't know the odds that, he ends up going anywhere. I know the Jets interviewed him and the Jets interviewed everybody. So I don't know if that really means anything. But, like, could you see Matt Nagy going somewhere else for 2025?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. We kind of mentioned him in the Carson Wentz video that we did prior to the Denver game that he could potentially become a head coach somewhere. I still think he has head coach potential. I like Nagy. Mahomes really seems to like Nagy, and I think that should tell you something. Like, he was a big advocate for Nagy when he was brought back on staff prior to 2022. I hope wherever he goes, if he does go somewhere, he goes somewhere with a quarterback. He's going to need a quarterback in order to succeed. I'm not totally sure the Jets with a washed-up Aaron Rodgers is the best situation for him, but we'll see what happens. Now, if he does go somewhere else, I think some people want to see him go somewhere else because they want new blood injected into the Chiefs coaching staff with a new offensive coordinator. And there's some names that I like that I would love to see the Chiefs bring in as a replacement. But, Michael, I think you're probably going to agree with me. If Matt Nagy goes elsewhere, they're just going to bring back Doug Peterson as the OC.
It's Doug Peterson or like Mike Kafka. It's going to be one of those two guys. Or maybe Eric Bieniemy, who's been campaigning to come back. Now, I'll actually break some news. So, Matt Nagy's kid goes to KU and works in the football recruiting office. And I happen to know one of my best friends also works in recruiting. And so they've kind of asked him a little bit, like not with, this isn't foolproof. Like I can't guarantee this, but from what Matt Nagy's kid said, he does not call the plays on 3rd and 4th down. But apparently on 1st and 2nd down, he does get pretty good input in the offense. And Andy Reid actually might let him call 1st downs. But like any important down, 3rd, 4th, he is not touching that. So I feel like Matt Nagy would probably crash and burn as a head coach. I wouldn't care if he stays for another year because this is just Andy Reid's offense. It's going to be Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, Eric Bieniemy, or Mike Kafka. It's one of those 4 guys, and it really kind of hinges on, Matt Nagy getting a head coaching job. And listen, I don't know if that's going to happen. King Jamie, appreciate the love. As always, it's good to see you around here.
Thank you.
Let's get into some more questions. I've been doing a bad job. Chief Splits has been DMing me, and so I'm just getting constant breaking news. Let me check. Andy Reid is already internally Joe Blameyer to replace Matt Nagy should he leave for a head coach.
Blameyer, yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he did coach wide receivers. Now that's Connor Embry. Joe Blameyer, does he coach tight ends now? What is his official title? Or is he quarterbacks coach? I can't remember. I would actually be intrigued by that one because I thought he did a nice job with the receivers when he was coaching the receivers, but I know that's not his position anymore.
And honestly, like I don't know a ton about him. He is currently the pass game coordinator.
He was with the Cleveland Browns. I can't tell you one thing about him. He was with the Cleveland Browns back when Josh Gordon was in his prime there.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm looking at it. Like, I wouldn't hate the Chiefs promoting an offensive coordinator internally instead of running it back with, Doug Peterson or, just bringing back one of the old cast of characters that, like, you know what you're going to get from them. And at the end of the day, the offensive coordinator is not, calling a lot of the shots, but he is a consultant. And so if he can, provide good insight, like, I don't care if you promote someone internally.
My thing with the OC is that, like, it doesn't – guys like Nagy and Bieniemy, they don't call plays. Like, I don't know how many more times this needs to be said. They do not call plays. Like you said, Michael, Nagy may even get to call 1st and 2nd down or whatever, but, like, in the postseason in particular, and this is Andy's offense, okay? So if they hire one of those guys, it just means it's going to be the Andy show. What I would like them to do is bring someone in that brings a philosophical blend to what Andy Reid likes to do, and we see a little bit more of a mix-up on offense because I think this offense has gotten a little stale over the last couple of years. And I think an injection of a new voice in the room, someone else to consult Andy Reid, push Andy Reid, would be a much better option than a retread like Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And also having someone that could maybe, balance out Andy Reid's love of throwing the football with, hey, let's run the ball in this situation, or let's, not run Isaiah Pacheco on the same exact run play 2 plays in a row. Like having someone that can be a good consultant for Andy Reid, I think is important. I definitely think that, maybe there's more upside in, having Joe be the new OC because listen, Mike Kafka was never the OC here. He was the quarterback's coach, and he got plucked to be the OC in New York. And while it hasn't worked out because the Giants' offense sucks, like you've seen guys in this organization get poached, like Ryan Poles, former Chiefs like executive. Like there are guys, especially I think even in this hiring cycle, There's another executive that got interviewed for, I want to say the Jets.
Yeah, Mike Borgonzi.
Yes. Like you've seen other guys, get a shot. And so, I'm all for, promoting new talent.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. But I hope for the OC that they bring someone in that is a new voice in the room. But I have a feeling it's just going to be a retread because that's what Andy has done typically.
Well, kind of along the lines of, coaching changes and guys leaving, the whole rumors that Steve Spagnuolo wants to be a head coach and that he goes somewhere to be a head coach. Listen, Josh, we can make this short and sweet. I don't think that Spags would be a very good head coach. I think that if he was smart to do what's best for him, he would stay the defensive coordinator in Kansas City, win a couple more Super Bowls, and be thought of as an all-time great defensive coordinator instead of going to a team like the Jets or the Raiders, and they end up sucking, and then he ends up just kind of getting put out to pasture somewhere. I feel like it's in his best interest to stay the DC at the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's kind of odd how everyone across the league seems to be super complimentary of Spags and the Chiefs defense, yet no one wants to hire him as their head coach. And there have certainly been worse candidates that have been hired over Spags. Like Spags hardly ever gets interviewed for head coaching jobs ever. No one seems to want him, but everyone seems to love him as DC on the Chiefs, which is great for us because I'd like to see him remain DC. I agree with you. I don't think he'd be a good head coach. He's been a head coach before and has failed now in St. Louis because that was one of his head coaching jobs. He failed for other reasons beyond his control. If you guys know anything about St. Louis and that organization, the way it was ran while he was there. But my thing with Spags, because the reason why I think he wouldn't be a good coach is because like a lot of his personnel decisions are just baffling to me. And I think that would not bode well for him being a head coach. Also, a lot of times you see these defensive head coaches not really do well. Most teams seem to trend toward an offensive head coach. I also think that Spags' defensive scheme is quite honestly outdated, and his personnel that he likes to go for is outdated. He doesn't tend to gravitate towards athletes at premium positions, and I don't like that. And it's worked in Kansas City, but I think it's also worked because he has finally gotten the perfect personnel in order to do what he wants to do. But those first few years where he was the Chiefs defensive coordinator, our defense was never great. We couldn't defend the run. I remember for like the first 3 or 4 years when Spags was the DC, if the other team got in the red zone, they were scoring. Like the red zone defense was terrible. It's worked in Kansas City and I'm glad it has, but I just don't think he would make a good head coach. I think he's perfect where he is right now.
They've really only been elite for the past 2 seasons. Like I remember early Steve Spagnuolo. There was at one point where we were having, us fans were like, is he the answer at defensive coordinator?
He was putting in Dan Sorensen over Juan Sorensen, like the corpse of Dan Sorensen. And that's what I mean by personnel decisions. Like some of the personnel decisions make zero sense to me. And like Joshua Uche is another one that we've talked about plenty of times this year. This team lacks a speed rusher. Joshua Uche is a pure speed rusher, and they just refuse to use him. It makes no sense.
I forgot about the corpse of Dan Sorensen being put out there and getting torched by the Bills and the Eagles and stuff like that. Want to give a shout out to Graham for the super chat, the $2 super chat. He said 88 was looking good for just coming off IR. Now that is Peyton Hendershot, if I'm correct, because I don't know numbers like that. But
it's Hendershot.
Honestly, it's kind of surprising to see how he is, I guess, elevated his game this season, because my first memory of Peyton Hendershot was him getting into it on the sideline with Roquan Smith in that first week when I think he pushed Mahomes out of bounds, and then Hendershot kind of got in his face, and everyone was like, Who is this guy? But no, he's looked pretty good in the sample size that we've seen from him, and it's almost like tight ends just flourish in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, he always had some receiving upside, and you saw that a little bit when he has gotten the opportunity to play. I'd like to see him develop as a depth tight end in this offense over the next few years, assuming that he is able to latch onto the roster somehow or the practice squad. Because also there was a point where he was waived or released and then brought back in between him being on the sidelines for that Ravens game and playing for the team later on in the year. So we'll see what happens. I mean, for third or fourth tight end, yeah, he's all right.
Definitely appreciate the super chat. I also want to say sorry to Chief Splits. He keeps DMing me like stuff about like breaking news. I'm just not seeing it because I'm not on my phone. But it was good to see you in the chat. Lego My Ego, good to see you as well. It's good to just rub it in for the Bengals fans.
Yep.
Good to see you, Graham and Tony. Let's get into another comment that I want to address from my community tab because it was a really good question. My screen's loading really quickly. Someone asked if you think the Chiefs are going to sign Hollywood Brown to an extension. And I think that's a really good question because the sample size that we've seen of Hollywood Brown this season hasn't been much, but in that small sample size, he has looked really impressive. And I don't think this is someone that is going to command that multi-year deal that he would be commanding if he ended up playing more than just a couple of games. But Josh, what do you think the likelihood that the Chiefs, really consider the idea of bringing Hollywood Brown back?
I don't know what the likelihood is, but from the day that he got injured with that shoulder, or I should say the day that it was announced that he would be out for most of the regular season, I said immediately, sign him for another year, extend him for another year, because he is a perfect fit for this offense, what they're trying to do. He brings back that deep threat that we haven't gotten to see quite much this year, unfortunately, but like he's cost effective, he's cheap. When you look at what some of these other wide receivers are getting paid and look at what Hollywood Brown is getting paid, he's a steal of a contract. And like you said, he didn't get that opportunity to show what he could do in this Chiefs offense because he was injured for most of the year. He's not going to get that chance to cash in free agency this year. So if I'm the Chiefs, I'm saying, hey, let's run this back. We'll extend you for another year. Same thing. We'll take some of those incentives that you unfortunately didn't get to earn from your previous contract and turn them into guaranteed money in this contract. That'll be your base salary. And then we'll attach some more incentives onto that with some more opportunities. And I think that would be perfect. And I think you could bring him back for about the same price as he was playing on this year, And he's a good fit for the offense. Like, I see no reason why not. Even in just the short time we've seen him on the field, like you said, like he's looked good. And I would like to keep him around because it's just another option that you have in the offense. And I want to see this Chiefs team continue to stack the wide receiver room with weapons like Brett Veach promised when he first took over the general manager job and has somewhat failed to do over the last couple of years. And also, Rashee Rice probably going to be facing suspension at the start of next year. Also coming off a major knee injury. You're going to want a veteran wide receiver.
My only concern is that Hollywood Brown's injury history is very long. Now, the good thing is that this shoulder injury wasn't something to his legs because Hollywood Brown, he's known for his speed. But, I'd be hesitant in giving out a longer-term deal. But listen, Hollywood Brown would take another season in this offense to get to show, the NFL what he can do with Patrick Mahomes. And he signs another one-year deal that's heavily incentive-based. And then he'll probably go somewhere else and make a bunch of money. But I think it's in his best interest to stay. And we also have to talk about, is DeAndre Hopkins here for another year? Like, do they keep him? Because then you're really cooking with Crisco. You've got a couple wide receivers that could, be legit.
Yeah, I don't know. I would love to have everyone back. I think that would be awesome. Like, bring back everyone you have now and then get Rashee Rice healthy and off suspension next year. This could be the best passing offense we've seen since Patrick Mahomes has been the starter. That would be really exciting. But I don't know. Hopkins is a guy that probably is either going to want more money than the Chiefs are willing to pay or will be more willing to retire. Like, I think there is a very solid chance that if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year and D-Hop gets his ring, he rides off into the sunset.
Yeah, that could happen. And it's so funny what the Chiefs did. I actually want to pull up that tweet from Chiefs Blitz because he ended up tweeting something earlier on today about DeAndre Hopkins, which I was actually going to talk about in a potential video. It was just so funny to see the Chiefs continue to make shrewd moves with their trades. Let me try to pull up the tweet. Okay, so the Chiefs will retain their 2025 fourth-round pick after wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins saw less than 50% of the regular season snaps. Kansas City will send the Titans a 2025 fifth-round draft pick. So you end up getting DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th-round draft pick. And it's just so smart of the Chiefs to kind of rest DeAndre Hopkins during the regular season, just get, him a little bit familiar with this offense, and then come playoff time, Josh, I don't know about you, I think they're just going to cut him loose.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was kind of getting upset during the regular season when the offense was really struggling there. I'm like, can we, because if you looked at DeAndre Hopkins' snap count on a weekly basis, it was like he's playing like 40% of the snaps. And it's like, what is the decision? Like, what's the thought process here? Like, he was getting outsnapped by Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster. And it's like, what the hell is going on? I was like, why are you being so stingy about that 5th-round draft pick or that 4th-round draft pick? And I guess I kind of understand it now in hindsight. I do think it's interesting that in that first game, DeAndre Hopkins played against the was it the Saints or the Buccaneers?
I think it was Raiders.
Was it the Raiders?
I think it was the Raiders.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. No, so that was his first game, but that was on like 3 days of practice, right?
Yeah. His first real game was that Bucs game.
Yes. So in that game, you saw what he could do. He had like a ton of catches. He had a touchdown. Was it 2 touchdowns in that game? I mean, he was a monster in that game. And I feel like you kind of saw what he could do when the Chiefs were actually involving him intentionally. And once they saw what he could do, they pulled him back and were like, all right, we know what he can do. Now we're going to hide him away for the rest of the season.
Well, and Josh, one thing that I also kind of want to mention is with all of the divas in the wide receiver world nowadays with Tyreek Hill and Deontay Johnson, the Chiefs getting DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th-round draft pick and him being such a good locker room guy and someone that is helping the progression of rookie Xavier Worthy and someone who isn't, for lack of a better term, bitching and moaning that he's not getting the football. That is a really good thing for this organization. So, I've just been super impressed with the player and the person that DeAndre Hopkins has been because, came in, no controversy, isn't, upset that he's not getting targeted because, if you put Deontay Johnson in that situation where they're purposefully not involving him to retain a draft pick, do you think that sits over well with a younger wide receiver? I don't.
I mean, I don't think these guys care that much, but I could see where you're coming from.
Definitely wouldn't fly with George Pickens, tell you that.
I would tell you what, though, if I were the Tennessee Titans, I'd be like, come on, man. What is the point of putting these stipulations in there if you aren't even going to try to play him? But I guess that's just the luxury of being such a good team is that you can hide DeAndre Hopkins and still go 15-2 in the regular season. So the Chiefs said, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to keep our draft pick.
Man, the luxury of being the Kansas City Chiefs. I do want to get to this comment from Brian. It's good to see you in the chat. Jalen Ramsey wants out of Miami. Should the Chiefs go after him? Not for that contract. He's also a bum. So I'm good on Jalen Ramsey.
Do you guys remember Jalen Ramsey in that Rams-Chiefs game a couple years ago when Kelsey absolutely cooked him on the way to the end zone? No, Ramsey is done.
Actually,
he's cooked.
I have a funny story about that. So, I work for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know if any of you guys know that, but I'm a part of the Pyro team, and we move the special effects stuff down on the field pregame. And so, I get to go to all the games and, work the beginning of them. But that game in particular, it was a freezing game. And I remember, it was really slick for whatever reason. And so, we're trying to push the stuff up the ramp, which is just a pain in the ass. And we're just trying to, do our job. And the tunnel's shaking. And for whatever reason, Jalen Ramsey was one of the last Rams players to come out of the tunnel. And I remember I'm at the base, the thing starts sliding, and I catch it. And I look to my right, and Jalen Ramsey's just right there. And he's like, am I good to go through? I'm like, yeah, man, go now. We almost killed Jalen Ramsey in the tunnel at Arrowhead Stadium. But I guess to long-winded answer that question, I don't want Jalen Ramsey. No.
Now, you know what? That's a good segue, though, into another question that somebody else asked. Well, we can answer the Matt Nagy one real quick. You can throw that back up there because we kind of touched on it earlier. So, Doug, if you want to see our long-form answer, you can just rewind. But we talked about that earlier. I don't have, I just want to see someone new. That's my thing. I want to see someone new, not a retread, not Doug Peterson, not Mike Kafka. Although Kafka never technically got to become the OC here, but he was in the organization. I don't want to see a retread Chiefs OC. I want to see someone new in the room that will push back on some of Andy's ideas, adding his own. And it's because this offense has gotten a little stale over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that statement. You want to go ahead and read the question that you were talking about?
Yeah, so one of my questions, and this was from at SGU2693 on the community post. He says, can the Chiefs afford to bring Tyreek Hill back and his huge salary? So, Michael, we both made videos on
We did.
Tyreek Hill. Can the Chiefs outright afford Tyreek Hill in that contract? No. They cannot just take on the full thing. But if they were to trade for Tyreek Hill, I believe the Dolphins would actually take the brunt of his cap hit. And the Chiefs could always throw in a valuable enough draft pick that the Miami Dolphins are willing to pay like half his contract. Like that's what the Chiefs did with the Titans for DeAndre Hopkins. Like they're not paying his full salary for this year. They wouldn't be able to afford him otherwise, if I remember correctly. Now, I have some additional thoughts on Tyreek Hill because I knew this was going to come up at some point tonight. But Michael, I'll let you get a chance to answer the question. Can the Chiefs afford to bring Tyreek Hill back, in your opinion? Because I know they have some other guys that need a contract coming up soon. So what do you think?
Man, what was that deal again? It was pretty pricey. I can't remember what it was. Was it $25 million a year? It might have been more. I mean, it was just.
So he signed a 3-year, $90 million contract. So that's like $30 million.
That's $30 million a year. And listen, with the guaranteed money involved in that, which hopefully Miami has already paid or is in the process of paying that. My issue with Tyreek Hill is he is a wide receiver on the wrong side of 30. If Miami wanted to eat the majority of that cap space to where Tyreek Hill was only commanding like $15 million a year, we can have a conversation. I'll have that conversation. It would also, in my opinion, have to be a situation where the Chiefs trade like a second-round draft pick and that's it, or like a third and a fourth. They are not trading anything richer than a second-round draft pick to get Tyreek Hill. And you mentioned the DeAndre Hopkins deal. The Chiefs will only make decisions and make trades that benefit them. And they're not going to give up a first or a second round draft pick necessarily to get Tyreek Hill, especially with the contract that is currently weighing over him. And I also think like Tyreek Hill kind of needs to lay in the bed that he made in wanting to go to Miami and being the highest paid wide receiver in football. He made that decision. I think the Chiefs should make him live with that decision.
So my take on this is pretty nuanced. I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, you know, I was looking at that one.
Good comment. Good comment.
I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, he chose this. This is what he deserves. Like he chose money over winning. But I think that's a little unfair. Like Tyreek Hill has now seen both sides. He's seen the winning side. And now he's seen the side where you're making a lot of money, but not winning as much. And now he's decided, I want to go back to winning. Maybe it's just him maturing as a player. And that's okay. I think you would be lying to yourself, you know, finances aside, you know, draft capital aside, you would be lying if you said you would not love to see Tyreek Hill back on this team. Okay. That connection with him and Patrick Mahomes was special and it was damn near unstoppable for many years. And it kind of feels like just in the middle of Tyreek Hill's prime, we were just robbed of that connection. And if you have an opportunity to get that back, because I always said that I felt like Tyreek Hill was going to return to Kansas City eventually. I mean, you just look at the way he talks about the Chiefs. Like, I feel like somewhere down the line, you know, he would come back on a 1-year deal for one last run at the thing. But if you have an opportunity to bring him back now while he's still in his prime, and yes, he's about to be on the wrong side of 30, which is typically an age range that Brett Veach stays away from, yada, yada. Tyreek Hill is a little bit different because he is quite possibly the most dangerous non-quarterback offensive weapon in NFL history. He is a future Hall of Famer. He has a history with this organization, and he also is familiar with the offense and playing with Patrick Mahomes and under Andy Reid, which is something that they really value. And I also talked about this in the video that I made, but Travis Kelce is getting older, and he's getting to that retirement age where he should not be carrying the load on offense and drawing all the attention. But Tyreek Hill is that guy that requires bracket coverage, that requires attention all the time, all the time, no matter what, if he's on the field. And to have a guy like that in the twilight years of Travis Kelce to kind of take off some of the load would be really cool. And I think you'd see Travis Kelce enthusiastically sign up for another year of football if he knew that Tyreek Hill was also going to be back on this team, getting the band back together. I just think when you look at it from a football standpoint, look at it objectively, the fit is there for Tyreek Hill back on the Kansas City Chiefs. But obviously there's a lot of hoops that would have to be jumped through in order to bring him back. But based on his comments that he made in that interview, he may be willing to put some money aside in order to go back to a winning organization.
Here's the thing. I don't have the vendetta against Tyreek Hill that a lot of Chiefs fans do. I understood why he left. I understood, going to be the highest paid wide receiver. Listen, if I'm in that position, I'm going to go make my bag as well. And he already won a Super Bowl, and so I kind of understood it. I do understand why Chiefs fans are kind of pissed off about him, saying Tua's more accurate and just a better quarterback.
What was he going to say? Like, that's people get way too worked up about that stuff. Like, and a lot of it too was just like him joking, trying to get a reaction out of you guys, and it worked. Whether it was to draw viewers to his podcast or just him joking with his old teammates, like, they're all friends. Like, if you go and watch the mic'd up from when the Chiefs played the Dolphins in Germany last year, like, he shows an insane amount of respect to Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones. Like, these guys are still buds.
Oh yeah. And listen, I never really cared. Like, what do you expect him to say in that position? No, like, Pat's better than Tua. And, like, he's not going to say that. And so I don't have any, vendetta against him. I would welcome him back. But again, it's just going to have to be a situation where the price is right. It makes sense for the Chiefs, and that, capital that you give up to go get him isn't too steep. And you're in a position with Tyreek Hill where there might be a team like the Las Vegas Raiders that would give up a second-round draft pick to go get Tyreek Hill. Like, who knows? They might even eat most of his, salary. Like, there's might be other teams out there that are willing to give up more, and the Chiefs are not going to be in that position. So I feel like it's just kind of a situation where I'd welcome if it happened, but like, I don't want to say that it's going to happen for sure because I can't guarantee that. But I will say, guys, we are getting close to the end of this live stream. Continue to get your questions in the comment section below. This has been a fantastic stream. Yeah. Josh and I love having a big audience. And again, we want to make this as interactive as possible. And so for weeks in the future, because we want to continue doing this into the offseason, and that actually kind of segues into this question. Doug, we are going to hit the draft so hard. We're going to do mock drafts beyond belief. We're going to talk about needs the Chiefs, need to address in the offseason. I'm actually going to try to go out to Green Bay, go to the draft. And so, yeah, the draft coverage is going to be there in the offseason. I definitely think that we're going to try to talk about a new player a day. That's my hope because there's so many guys to talk about in this draft class. But Josh, do you have anything else you kind of want to talk about from your comment section? Let me check really quickly if I got anything.
I think that was pretty much it. Well. Yeah, I think that was pretty much it from mine. Yeah, that was all the questions I had on my community post. I'll let you scan yours and last call for you guys.
There was a good question that I did want to talk about. Someone asks, what are the 3 essential mindsets for Mahomes to keep himself and share with his teammates in moments of crisis or utmost difficulty? And that kind of made me think about, talking about how this Chiefs team situationally is just better than everybody else. And I think it's a big reason why they've been to so many Super Bowls is that when the game's on the line and you need someone to make a play, Patrick Mahomes is going to go make that play. And he also has the playmakers that he has his utmost trust and confidence in that can go do it. Like last year when Marquez Valdez-Scantling looked like a, high school wide receiver dropping passes, somehow, some way, he was able to turn it around. And this Chiefs offense figured out a way. And I feel like he just does such a good job of instilling confidence in his guys. And I think that, it's a very valuable trait that the guys want to play around Patrick Mahomes. If you want to look at a situation where there isn't utmost confidence in your quarterback, it's the Jet situation with Aaron Rodgers. Guys don't want to play for Aaron Rodgers like they will for Patrick Mahomes.
Unless you're Devontae Adams. And
unless you're him, which, listen, if I'm getting 11 to 12 receptions a game, I'll go there too.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, that was a really interesting question. I think, something that Patrick Mahomes should be stressing to his younger teammates or less experienced teammates in these situations is do your job. Like, yes, this is the playoffs, but like, don't try to do too much. Live to see another rep. Do your job. And if you do that and do what these coaches ask of you, you're going to put yourself in a really good position to succeed this postseason. The game moves a lot faster, but if you're just taking it rep by rep and doing your job and trying to win every single rep, then that's a really good mentality to have, especially going up against some of these other teams where these players, these really young players that have never been in this situation before are jacked up and they're going to be trying to do too much. They may over pursue or make a mistake, and you can capitalize on that.
Yeah, good to see you as well, Gary. I think the last question that we can kind of round this stream out with is a little off topic, but who's winning the MVP, Josh? Is it going to be Lamar Jackson? Is it going to be Josh Allen? Is it going to be Saquon? Who do you got?
I think it's going to be Josh Allen, but I think the voting is going to be really, really close. I think a lot of people are trying to make this case for Lamar that I just don't think is there. I think this should be Josh Allen's award this year. But there's going to be a lot of votes for Lamar. And I get it. Like statistically, he's had a really good season and all of that stuff. But Josh Allen did this in a year where the Bills were kind of in a soft reset. This was not really an all-in year for them. They had to cut some expensive players. They rebuilt their wide receiver room. It's not been an elite wide receiver room by any means. Their defense also has not been good, mostly for the second half of the season. And Josh Allen has tried to carry them, or had to carry them, I should say. So I think he's the MVP, and he's pushed for that MVP award a few times where Patrick Mahomes was just better or the Chiefs were the better team. And I think it's his turn.
Yeah, I would say Josh Allen should win the MVP. Listen, if they gave it to Lamar Jackson, I think it's strictly because of the narrative, and they just need to have some quarterback in the AFC do something better than Patrick Mahomes. Like, Josh Allen has just played so well this season, and Lamar Jackson's stats have been good, but I feel like Josh Allen's stats, listen, they both stat pad. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. They both stat pad, but Josh Allen's reason for stat padding makes a lot more sense when his defense is giving up 40 points a game. So I personally think that Josh Allen will win MVP, and I kind of hope he does over Lamar Jackson, but I think that both of those guys are going to have their fair share of troubles in the playoffs if they have to come to Arrowhead Stadium.
Yep, no, I agree with you, and I think that's a good stopping point. Those are our picks for MVP.
I do as well. So, Josh, this has been a fantastic live stream. We appreciate all of you guys for watching. Hit that like button on this live stream if you haven't already. And I'll say this quickly, that I will be doing the AFC West Roundtable in about an hour. So you guys definitely want to go over there. The link is in the description. Represent the Chiefs Kingdom. But again, like the video, subscribe to both of our channels. This is a duo live stream. Josh, anything else you want to say?
Nope. Well, besides plugging myself, if you're watching this on Michael's side, subscribe to my channel, Show Me Football. If you're watching this from my side, go subscribe to Michael D'Arcy, KC Sports Report. You check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, and then follow me on Twitter at ShowMeFB.
And if you guys like these live streams, please let us know in the comment section below. We want to make these a permanent thing as we go on into the offseason and into the playoffs. If you guys definitely like this, just let us know because we enjoy doing them. It's always good to answer your questions and also just, chop it up with the Chiefs Kingdom. So until next time, guys, I'm Michael D'Arcy. He's Josh Fann. Thank you guys for watching this Kansas City Chiefs live stream. We'll see you next time.